Carrie, the expat mommy here, back with another video about raising bilinguals. Today I'd like to dive more into the method of one parent, one language, including why we chose it for our family, how we've implemented it, and how it's worked for us so far. So with that being said, let's get started. So I guess the first question I should address is, what is one parent, one language? As I mentioned in my previous video, it is the method in which one parent speaks to one language to the child and the other parent speaks in another. For us, this was the most practical method, and we've kind of implemented other methods in along with it, but with the main focus being that I speak English with our sons and my husband speaks German as he is German. Now our home language is also still normally English. We tend to stick with it when we're talking to each other in a group, and our community language is German as we live in Germany. Now another question might be is, well, Carrie, why aren't you guys just speaking English at home and speaking German when you're out and about? Now for us, it was the most organic and fair way to have the one parent, one language, in the sense that I still get to speak my native tongue with our sons and my husband his, and those most natural for us, and therefore we don't really get to choose someone's native language over another. So that is the reason why we also chose one parent, one language. With that being said, I'd like to tell you a little bit of how we've implemented this method so that our son will keep in each language as long as possible and with as little code switching as possible. So let me explain that. So just as a disclaimer before I get into the whole, this is how we've implemented it and this is how we prevent our son from code switching. Code switching is not a bad thing. It shows that a child is just trying to communicate in whatever means possible, and it shows that he has all of these means available to actually communicate with people, because the main key, what you want to, when thinking about speaking a language, the main thing that you're wanting to do anyways is communicate. And that in raising children bilingually is mainly giving them another way to communicate. And so this is not saying code switching is bad whatsoever. This is just saying, okay, we're trying to get him focused, that he stays in the language, because sometimes it could be people don't understand what you're saying in German, son, so let's try to stick with just one language at a time. The main thing we try to do is have one-on-one time with our children, that they just speak one language at a time with either mama or papa, and that we really stick with it, and that they don't switch back and forth all the time, and they really then focus on who they're talking to and in what language. The second thing we have implemented is when our son does code switch, asking him then, how does mama say that? How does papa say that? And to kind of test, does he have that word at all in his vocabulary? Does he have a word for fork in German? Or does he have that? Is he using it because that was the first word that he could think of? Or is he using it because he doesn't know what the word is in his other language? So with my husband and I both being bilingual ourselves, we're able to kind of work with this a little bit more. We understand what he is saying most of the time in either language that he speaks, but really to see, okay, does he not know that Gabel is fork in German, or is he just using whatever word was at his disposal for the time? So for the most part, the way that we have implemented the language learning process for our son, and in the sense of just sticking with one language partner at a time, so speaking just to mama in English or speaking just to papa in German, and really having that one-on-one time with him and doing things with him in one language, that has helped tremendously. But also the question of asking him, hey, what does mama say to that? What does papa say to that? And really sticking and figuring out, does he have that vocabulary as well in the other language? And this, for the most part, has helped us also to maintain his balanced bilingualism, that he can still also express himself and using words in either language. But this question of what does mama say to that, or what does papa say to that, has created kind of an interesting phenomenon with my child. If he goes to you and you are just speaking German to him, and he of course figures it out, he speaks German back to you. And if you ask him, if you didn't understand something and you ask him, excuse me, like, wie bitte? He will go and switch into English thinking that you didn't understand the word, not necessarily his pronunciation or whatever of it, but rather that you didn't understand that language and therefore he needs to talk to you in his other language, which I find very interesting that a 2.5-year-old would already figure out the best way for him to communicate with you by using either language. And although he sticks to either language as much as possible, that he will switch into the other language if he thinks that you have not understood. So I find that very interesting that he's just 2.5, but he's already figured out that there is a difference here. Mama speaks one, Papa speaks the other, and I shouldn't mix them as much. So there is something there that's different. And sometimes I talk to people who just speak the one language, other people who speak the other. So it's very interesting. I wouldn't have ever thought that going into this bilingualism or raising bilingual journey that we would have ever come across that as early. I always thought that that was a phenomenon that came later on, that the differentiation between the two languages, that children already know that. So it's definitely a case of, do not ever doubt a child's mind and what they are capable of, especially when it comes to speaking languages, because their little brains are sponges and they will figure it out, and they will figure out when to use one language, when to use the other, and maybe ever to use a third or a fourth even. If you are questioning if you should raise your children bilingually and you are wondering, how can I do this? Just expose them to the language as much as possible. They offer here in our town, they offer the chance to go to the library, and then they have different reading hours depending on what language you'd like to perhaps have your child go and listen to. I think they have Turkish and they have English and they have French, and they have all these they have all these speakers come and read to children out loud. And I think even just something like that, whatever, that they can have this kind of ear for that they already are starting to be aware that there are multiple languages. Just knowing that is for the better. And I'm really jealous sometimes of my son that he is already able to speak 2 languages, and it took me forever to actually even try to speak a second one. So yeah, okay, now that I've rambled long enough, I hope that was interesting maybe for you, that in how our journey so far is going with raising our little bilinguals. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me in the comments below. If you have any comments about how it is for you raising your own little bilinguals, or even perhaps having been raised bilingually, I would love to hear that. Any tips that you have. If you like this video, please feel free to give it a thumbs up. And if you are interested in other videos about expat life for me as an American in Germany, or even how it is to raise children abroad and bilingually, please feel free to subscribe. With that being said, I hope you're all having a wonderful week, and I'll see you next time. Bye!